What's up, everyone? It's Scotty with Money Investing, and yet another strong day for the markets. Well, Nasdaq pushing higher a little bit over 70 basis points. We have the Dow Jones having its best month since January, and S&P 500 also setting itself up for a very critical decision time for next week as the stage is set for Apple earnings, PayPal, AMD, Nvidia coming out later in May as well, and not to mention the Fed meeting on May 3rd. So next week is Fed week. And we've got, of course, Jerome Powell, FOMC speech, and not to mention the interest rate hike of 25 basis points. At least that's what the market's pricing in at the moment. And we did have a lot of moves today. So Tesla pushing higher. We did have Amazon moving lower quite a bit, about 4%. So as always, if you enjoyed this video, find it helpful, make sure that you drop a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're just joining us for the first time. The link to our Discord and Patreon is going to be down below if you're interested in joining us. There is a 16% discount that is only available till Sunday. So again, just 2 more days on after April 30th. That discount will go away, and you'll get access to all the options alerts. By the way, we sold Tesla puts that are now up almost 50% in this week alone. And of course, not to mention, you'll get access to all the private live streams, trade ideas, day trades, swing trades, and of course, all the member benefits as well. So link's going to be down below if you're interested in joining. So Dow here gains more than 250 points Friday as index finishes up best month since January. And the blue chip index closed 270 points higher, 0.8% higher at 34,000. So we're back over that level. S&P 500 finishing at 4169. So we're almost getting up to 4,200. And the Nasdaq also advancing 69 basis points to 12,226. So the stage is really set for these two indices going into next week because we are once again inside that bear camp or that red rectangle, and it's going to get really, really important how we trade from these levels next week, whether we break out or we get rejected, right? Because we've gotten rejected at the same exact level 3 to 4 times in the past. So it's really going to be game time for both the Nasdaq and the S&P 500. So the Dow finished April 2.5% higher. The S&P was at 1.5%. The Nasdaq was, I think, slightly up 50 basis points. And on the weekly basis, the Nasdaq definitely saw the largest gain, 1.3% on the back of Microsoft, Meta, Tesla, all these earnings, and of course, all the companies pushing higher as well. So this is what the day looked like. Semiconductors pushing up, Nvidia, AMD, Intel, all of them having a lot of buyers to step in. Apple here, Microsoft also pushing higher. Microsoft hitting a new 52-week high. Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, everything's green. And we had energy, industrials, Exxon and Chevron also reported their numbers. They were very flat. They were still, trading at almost at all-time highs, and the earnings did grow. More so for Chevron, not so much for more so for Exxon, not so much for Chevron. But again, we're going to do a separate analysis, more detailed video on them as well. We talked about it briefly during our private live stream. And of course, Amazon down almost 4% on the potential guidance. Even though I liked the numbers overall, I think the numbers were very solid. You can take a look at that in my other video that I posted yesterday on Amazon. And Tesla up, of course, 2.5%, getting a bit of a rebound after the selling pressure and the underperformance we've seen from Tesla in recent days. This right here is the entire market. So again, everything very, very green. Some of the more regional banks definitely selling off. So you'll notice that this right here was a section where we did have a pretty significant sell-off because First Republic, there is definitely a lot of news, a lot of headlines, and a lot of concerns that First Republic might go into receivership with FDIC, and it was actually selling off even further today, down another 43%. And after hours, it was down even more. I think it was down a little bit over 33% after hours, trading as low as $1.62. So in the last few months here, you'll notice how First Republic has absolutely gotten destroyed in the markets from $143 down to $1.62 is a drop of over 99%. It's pretty much lost all of its market value, and the reason is because of the deposit outflows, the banking failures with Silicon Valley Bank, and of course a lot of unrealized losses on the books. And that's really where it is right now. But the thing is that they've mentioned in the earnings that the deposit outflows have slowed down. So it's not as aggressive as it was when Silicon Valley Bank was collapsing. But of course, with such a smaller deposit base, there will need to be a significant repricing because the revenues, earnings, everything's going to be lower. There's going to be huge cost cuts, and existing depositors are also going to be fearful of keeping cash in First Republic Bank when the situation is pretty dire. So that's really where we are with this bank, down 43% again. Market cap's now under $650 million. So definitely not a good sign for regional banks. And again, we don't even know what's yet to come in the economy, right? This is just a little bit of a glimpse of what's going on with the economy with higher interest rates. So when it comes to individual sectors, we had 10 out of 11 sectors pushing higher, except for utilities, which was down in the last 1 week. It's been a pretty split market with, of course, NASDAQ sectors, comm services, tech, all pushing higher. And then in the last 1 month, we've got all 11 sectors in the S&P 500 pushing higher to the upside. So we're seeing a very, very green move to the upside. And of course, canola, crude oil, natural gas, lean hogs, orange juice, all pushing higher with volatility getting crushed. Now under 16, coffee prices and lumber prices also pulling back, with Bitcoin just a little bit over 29,000 and Ether just under 1,900. So this right here was the move from our FANG Mint stocks. You'll notice 2.5% for Tesla, AMD pushing higher, Nvidia up almost 2%, Netflix, Microsoft, all of them in very much nice momentum upwards, and Google and Amazon, of course, struggling a little bit. Amazon more so than anyone else. This right here was the intraday price action. So even intraday, we saw a lot of momentum to the upside. So it wasn't like a gap up and selling pressure intraday. No, it was a flat open and then a consistent move to the upside for the market. So it was a green day and a green candle. And of course, we had more stocks advancing to the upside, almost 4,000 stocks pushing higher. That's over 60% of the market advancing between 0 and over 10%. And very few names that were down anywhere between 5 to 10 to as much as over 10% on the day. So this right here is the volatility, now trading at 15.77, dropped by 7% on the day. So absolutely getting crushed, hitting a new 52-week low, down to 15.72. So volatility is really rock bottom right now, coming down to significantly low levels. And that in itself is good for the markets, because volatility coming down is that inverse correlation pushes the market higher. But it really is setting us up for a very interesting week next week. And this right here is going to be that support at 14, because that's a level that we have come down to back in June, a level we tested back in October. And then, of course, even lower levels all the way down to as low as 11 for volatility are also not unlikely or off the table, because those are levels we have tested back in 2019 in July, this right here in December 2019, of course, before this huge pandemic spike happened in volatility. So we're coming down, and that's pushing the markets higher. But don't forget, the low volatility is not really a sign of a stronger bullish market, but it really is gotta be keeping us cautious to the downside with the markets as well, because of the VIX spikes, the markets do end up selling off. Usually the best moments to be a buyer in the market really are when the VIX is on the upside here, right? These are some of the best moments to actually take advantage of buying opportunities, when the VIX obviously is spiking back over 30, 35, 40 levels. But nonetheless, of course, we're still coming down pretty aggressively, and next levels going to be 14 down to 11 for the volatility. Crude oil here, getting a little bit of a bounce, so up over 2.5%, back over $76 a barrel. So we're seeing a little bit of support getting validated here for crude oil, as we have talked about in the past. $73, $74 is going to be that level to watch, and of course resistance back up to over $80, $81 per barrel. This right here is going to be Ether, just very flat, not really doing much, just a little bit under 1,900, and Bitcoin also just trading under 30,000. We're mostly consolidating sideways with a resistance at 30K and support at $27,000. And Ether, same story, support at around 1,700 with a resistance at 2,100 for Ethereum. This right here is a separate chart that I have shared with all the members in our private live streams, and what this really shows us is a breakout on QQQs, right? So again, if you think about what really is driving this market rally, because the interesting thing is, since QQQs are the NASDAQ 100 and NASDAQ 100, 50% of the NASDAQ 100 is big tech stocks. That's why we're seeing a little bit of a breakout for this particular ETF. And I made that comparison between NDX, which is the NASDAQ 100, right? You can see that we're starting to break to the upside. You can see that consolidation range, and it's now starting to pop above that resistance. And not to mention that we are nowhere near close to our previous resistance. In fact, we already did break out, right? We already broke outside all this previous resistance where we got rejected at, and then we started consolidating sideways, or resistance acting as a new support, and now we're starting to see another breakout to the upside. Now, the reason why this is so different from the regular NASDAQ composite, which is still at a resistance, you can see that we're still battling through this resistance, we haven't broken out yet, is because of big tech, right? NASDAQ 100, the composition of that index with respect to big tech is significantly higher than NASDAQ composite's composition of big tech. So hope that makes sense, because this right here, we've got a much more broader index as opposed to NASDAQ 100, which is a lot more concentrated specifically when it comes to big tech. So because of the rallies in Apple, Microsoft, and Tesla, and some of the likes of these big tech companies, we're seeing the NASDAQ break to the upside, especially the NASDAQ 100 break out of this resistance, and the next target is going to be all the way up to this level right here at close to 13,700 is going to be next. But of course, for the NASDAQ composite, is going to be very interesting whether we get a breakout next week or get a rejection similar to what we have already seen in the past. And of course, the next level is going to be all the way up to here at 13,100. So that's the level that I'm really paying attention to, the NASDAQ composite, because the difference in the two really tells me that this rally still is lacking the actual breadth. It's still lacking legs, so to speak, right? We're only seeing a handful of names kind of drive this market higher, especially on the NASDAQ side. S&P 500 is still kind of battling through that resistance here. You'll notice that we're once again back up to that level of resistance that we have talked about on the channel before. And beyond that, right, if you do end up breaking outside of this level, beyond that, it's going to be 4,300, right? So this right here is going to be that next level to watch. But first things first, this is going to be that level to watch going into next week for the market to see whether we get a breakout to the upside or not. Another one to watch is going to be RSP. That's your equal weight S&P 500. And you'll notice that we're nowhere near close to that resistance right now. That resistance is going to be over here, and we are so far off, right? So that's the same level from back in June. That's the same level from back in December. And again, you'll notice that we're nowhere near close to that resistance yet because it's equal weighted, right? This is an S&P 500 index, ticker symbol RSP, which is equal weighted and not heavily weighted as the S&P 500 is towards big tech stocks. So very simple, logical sense that it makes is that the rally that we're seeing still is very much dependent on a handful of names, and it does lack the legs or the breadth behind it to really make it a more broad-based move. Something to keep in mind as we head into next week. S&P 500. So again, we just briefly went over that, but just going over that again. So we're approaching that resistance and that bear camp again. We're inside this red rectangle. That's the one to watch. And same with the NASDAQ as well. We're inside this red rectangle, or in other words, the bear camp. Next week's going to be quite interesting whether big tech can continue to move to the upside, because we've got Apple, we've got PayPal, we've got AMD. So lots of companies are reporting earnings, so it's going to be a busy week, as well as the Federal Reserve and FOMC meeting as well. So going over to Apple here, and Apple on the day up another 75 basis points, so 170, almost getting up to that level. Next resistance is going to be at 177. So this right here is going to be that level to watch, and they are scheduled to report on Thursday, May 4th. So the first half of the week is going to be very interesting with the Federal Reserve and Jerome Powell and the interest rate hike and the guidance. And of course, the back half of the week, we've got lots of earnings. Amazon here definitely selling off quite a bit, but still trading above that support at close to $104. So this right here is going to be that level to watch. Again, like I said, earnings were good. In my opinion, they reported some good numbers. I think the focus is very much on profitability and cost cuts. And that's really what's going to drive the stock higher, in my opinion, over the course of, if not this year, then certainly next year, as the earnings start to improve for Amazon. So I think the focus is very much going to get shifted a little bit from growth over to actual profitability under Andy Jassy. Talking about Tesla, and Tesla here on the day up another 2.5%, so recovering a little bit back higher. So we didn't quite get that entire gap fill. We're seeing Tesla rotate back higher. I will most likely be closing out my cash secured puts. In other words, buying them back to cover my cash secured puts, which are already at 50%. So another spike up to 170, 175. I would very much like to close out that cash secured put for 75, 80% profit. That's the option that we sold not too long ago, I think earlier this week, to take advantage of the selling pressure in Tesla. Next up, and then of course, resistance is going to stay put at roughly 170, 175 here inside this red rectangle. And we got a support sitting inside this gap that it needs to fill, 146 to 152 for Tesla moving forward. Talking about NVIDIA. Nvidia here up another 1.9%. So getting bought up. So again, earnings really saved Nvidia. It was breaking down below that 21 EMA, but after Microsoft, after Meta, and after today's rally, we are back up to 277. Resistance is going to stay put over here, roughly at around 279, 280, all the way up to as much as $290 per share for Nvidia moving forward. So it was a bit weak, but of course getting pushed right back up. I still do feel pretty confident that it can get rejected, but a lot of it depends on earnings. AMD is the first one to go next week, which we'll get to next. And if they report some good numbers or guidance, that can push Nvidia higher as well. Talking about advanced micro devices and AMD here, pushing back up. It was starting to become really oversold. So AMD, rightly so, pushing higher. So no concerns there. And it did drop about 15 to 18% here, 17.5% before pushing higher. So we're seeing a bit of a lift back up on our side and on the MACD. Resistance and target's going to stay put all the way up to $102, $103. This right here from a more horizontal standpoint, and all the way up to as much as 110 for AMD even further. Talking about PayPal, and PayPal also shined on the day, up over 2%, 2.3%, and really now starting to push right back up. $76 is where it traded at. This right here is going to be that lower high for us to watch, and we'll continue to monitor if it can break out above this resistance. And the next targets are going to be all the way up to $87, right? That's going to potentially be an upside of close to 14, 15%. So that right there is going to be that resistance level to watch. We're still consolidating sideways, or we have been consolidating for the longest time in between sort of like this range where PayPal doesn't really, break out above this. So if you do see another momentum, and earnings are coming up next week on May 9th or May 8th is when they're reporting. So not next week, the week after. So that can be enough for us to see that another momentum to the upside. $87, $80 is going to be that support. Or that resistance and that target. Square on the day getting a little bit of a bounce back higher. So we did trade as low as 58.97. This right here is a support that we have talked about on the channel before. And we're seeing some buyers to step in. We're still in the context of this downtrend, still making lower highs and lower lows. But support level, like I said, is going to stay put at $58, $59 per share. Resistance all the way up to $67.50 for Square. And of course, we got a huge target up to $83, $89 for Block. Talking about Meta platforms, and Meta here on the day up another 74 basis points. So once again, getting bought out from that support of $235, $236. So green candle, very nice move to the upside. Buyers stepping in back over $240. We got, of course, a huge gap to fill for Meta here. I sold a covered call on Meta yesterday. And will most likely sell more if Meta continues to push higher, and if we end up kind of filling in this gap for the company. Talking a little bit about Netflix, and Netflix here on the day was up over 1.2%, continues to trade inside this symmetrical triangle, so we're making lower highs and higher lows. Again, support level is going to stay up at $275, resistance at $380. My fair value obviously a lot lower than where it's trading at the moment. Last few, we got Google, and Google on the day down slightly 14 basis points, so not a lot to discuss, but really what we're seeing is a lot of consolidation sideways in that range for Google, and really just getting rejected at $109, $110. So we'll continue to monitor this right here as a resistance, and again, next week with the Fed meeting, we'll see if we actually get a breakout. If we do, 123 is going to be that next target to watch, and if we get a rejection, 101, close to $100, is going to be that support. Microsoft still the winner on the day, up another 80 basis points, hitting up to $308. Market cap now approaching almost $2.3 trillion. We've got a huge resistance at 312, so that right there is going to be that level to watch. And of course, earnings really saved this company. We were on the way down. You can already see this right here was such a consistent move to the downside, getting rejected, rolling over, and then boom, earnings came out, huge gap up, and that continuation on AI. So $312 is going to be that resistance and that next target to watch for Microsoft. And last but not least, we got Shopify pushing up over 1.88%. So it's been a slow mover. They are reporting earnings, I believe, next week on May 4th. So we'll most likely do a video on Shopify as well after the earnings get reported. But resistance is going to stay at $54, $55. Support level at close to $41 per share. So hope you guys enjoyed this video and a complete update on the markets. We are once again moving higher on a little bit of a lack of breadth, meaning that most of the big techs are really that's driving the markets higher. But of course, earnings season is underway. We are seeing some good beats, but also because earnings expectations were already rock bottom, to begin with, because we've seen so many downward revisions from analysts over the last few months. But not to mention, we are once again approaching those area of resistance for both the S&P and the Nasdaq as well. So it's going to get really interesting where we end up next week. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, found it helpful. If you did, make sure that you drop a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Link to our Discord and Patreon is going to be down below. 16% annual discount, only valid for 2 more days. And after that, it's going to go away. So link's going to be down below. As always, happy investing. I'll see you all in the next video.